steal chess. Now we're actually starting with a pivotal and very interesting moment of the Carlsen-Duda game, reversed Duda-Carlsen game. And what's fascinating is how Duda is handling the situation. Now, as we all know, Duda is not really in contention for first place. Who's in first place is mostly Carlsen, half point behind Caruana, who's actually doing great. Now, yes, Duda is attacking the f5 pawn, but notice that knight on h6. What is that doing there? In fact, we have to track back a little bit to take a look. Queen f3 is putting pressure there, g6. And according to all rules of chess, you wouldn't want to take on h6 because, as normal wisdom would tell you, that knight will never get out. But Duda doesn't play by the rule books. He goes knight takes h6, king g7, takes, knight e4, hoping to get the knight out with knight g4. If the knight ever moves, then there's knight g4. So knight h7. If knight g4 now, then there's f5, and that fork is annoying. So Duda avoids that. g4 is played, f5, g takes, knight g3. And the question is if Duda will be in time to save that pony on h6. Now, according to wisdom, that shouldn't be the one happening. But chess is not that much of a dogmatic game. So Black could try rook f8 or f4. Both seem actually reasonable. f4, on the other hand, would potentially open up my bishop. Oh, f4 was played, knight f5. And kind of the problem with f4, and maybe that's why rook f8 was interesting, is to avoid that. On the other hand, this could run into d4. You can't really take because rook takes e6. And if e4, I can go ahead and play f3 in the future. And at f4, I might even take. And what's interesting in these types of positions, that even though Black would have enough pieces, because of this majestic center, this could be very nice and pleasant for White. But f4 was played, knight f5. So it kind of feels that Duda is jumping into the fire, but actually he had no choice, because both of these knights had to be defended. If knight f5 here, I think I can just walk up my king. Actually, knight f5, or just hide my king somewhere. And because of that, the f5 knight is falling. So knight f5 was played, king g6. Very interesting moment. Probably d4 has to be played here. Nothing else you could really do. But as you can tell by the times, this is very dangerous for Duda. So d4, opening up the bishop and defending that knight. Yeah, I kind of agree with chat. Hello there. That Magnus has more time in a drawn position. I wouldn't be so sure. Like in this position, White makes one little slip and it's over. So it might be a draw objectively, but both of those knights are kind of stuck. Also, if Magnus were to find something trickier, he could actually win the game. But let's take a look at this. So d4. Now, I would be hard-pressed to play e takes d4 here, because so many checks look nasty. e6 could fall. But at worst, I could just take on e6. And this is just great for White. Oh, knight takes e6. So e takes d4 is not a move. d4 is definitely the monster move, as played by Duda. Now, people don't really know much about Duda in general, but Duda is one of those sharpest players. that is willing to go into aggressive positions, but sometimes it backfires. Knight g5 played. I was about just to suggest that, to look for counterplay with this forking. And also with the idea of bringing the bishop in. No knight jumps yet, because I'll take on h6. Takes, and there's just too much material, and this bishop on c1 still kind of dead. The question is, to continue here. King g2 runs into bishop d5 checks. But you still want to walk out of this knight f3. Note this is the problem of this h6 knight, which is kind of weird. You're stuck there defending it, and you can't really move otherwise. So by the way, hello all, hello chat. I'm Grandmaster Dennis Borsch, and I'm going to look at these big critical games between Duda Carlsen and Carlsen-Caruana. And if you have any suggestions where to look at or which game you're interested in, do let me know. Be happy to share and talk about it. Hello there, Von Hoffman. Hello, Bezer. Welcome, welcome, people. So, let's take a look. Now, I could play rook d1. Let's say if I go rook d1. This looks a little weird, but is very ambitious. I'm moving out of this knight f3 trickery, also maybe preparing bishop d3 moves. There's no, you can't really take because knight takes f5. You could walk out with king h5 or king f. If king f6, I can make a run for it. Check, king g2, bishop d5, de. So maybe rook d1 is an interesting idea. Maybe e4? Maybe e4 is a problem. Bishop f4 doesn't work because knight h3 check, and I take on f4. Maybe you could go for that. Takes. Duda is thinking, yes. Takes. And take on e4. Now we have, oh no, I'm down a piece, so this is bad. Yeah, this is just bad. So rook d1, maybe e4. You can't take because of knight h3. Actually, delete the rest because it's pointless. e4. And now you're stuck. And that's the problem with this whole system that Duda built. If there's no more defense on the knights, it's gone. Everyone's saying king g2 is forced, which is logical because I think you can't allow e4. If e4 now, though, what if I play e4 now? If you take, I take, and I take on f5, I'm up a piece. If you take on f4, I still take on f5. Now, I see the suggestions of Magnus going for a draw. You guys are familiar with Magnus Carlsen? I'm not sure. If he sees a chance to play on, he'll play on. So let's see, e4. So at the moment, Carlsen has nearly 40 minutes against Duda's 20. Hibbert says rook d8 and bring your rook. Well, first off, I do want to get rid of this pin because it annoys me greatly. Might even have some h4 moves. Let's say rook d8, h4. Wait. Can I go knight e7? No. Yeah, it is actually a crazy position. So I don't see a reason why Carlsen would start repeating. If he must, he will. But I don't think that's his first choice. say e4. Maybe I can try rook e4, or then there's bishop d5. So rook e4, which would be interesting. Trying to activate my guys as this bishop is blocked in. But I have a feeling bishop d5, and you're gone. And you're gone. So e4, bishop f4, bishop f5. Maybe I could try d5, forking you. Oh, forking. You take bishop f4, and now my knights are okay. Go e3. I'll go king g3. And suddenly your king is in danger. Let's say ef. Wow, this is wild. This is extremely wild and volatile. This is crazy. I don't know what's going on here. Just looks crazy. Like, for example, would you say that this position's equal? I wouldn't dare say this is equal. Even if it's equal. I think it's just too much. Hey, Ohas, how's it going? Hello there. Chess Veep chat, how's it going? You're just looking at the Carlsen game, and this is just madness. I really want some knight jumps, honestly, but then the h6 is hanging. And that's no good. My e1's hanging as well. Maybe I could take, and go knight g4. Just stabilizing. Takes. Knight g4, rook e1. Hitting this rook, queening is coming. What the heck is going on here? This is crazy. This is just crazy. Hello, Evelyn. How's it going? This is just insane. This is insanity. And I'm kind of shocked because as I take a look at this, it's not really suggested anywhere else. Like, yes, bishop d5 is suggested and draw, but why? Probably like computers do prefer like equality when they shouldn't be. Because mayhem is fun. The computer should realize that. Mayhem is good. Good for your health. Bishop d5 check was played. Okay, I guess king f1. You can't really run into this because knight f3 check. So king f1 will be played. So maybe he's actually going for the draw. It's so hard to believe that. King f6, then I can run away with my knight. Yes, these are the moves played. But okay, let's take this moment to look at the Fabi game. So far, Black actually achieved the dream scenario. Black will be playing against a terrible bishop. If you play d5, it's game over. I have a wonderful knight on e5. Fabiano has lots of play on the king and a majestic knight on e5. What else could you dream of? So no wonder that Kovalyov doesn't want any part of that and rather gives up the pawn and activates the bishop. So probably either queen d3 makes sense, just to put some threats and try to exchange pieces, or activate the bishop with bishop e4. But if you remember, Caruana is leading half a point ahead of Carlsen, and if he wins today, then probably it'll be very, very important to see if actually Carlsen pull it off. Because if he just draws, it won't be enough. Bishop e4 was played. But I think objectively, Caruana should be winning this. Maybe rook e8 to put pressure on this guy. And I could move my queen, but I still want to eye the king side in the future. So if anything, you move your queen to c1, I want to hop over to h4, attack your rook on e1, and eye your king. So it's something that I would be trying to look for. Let's look at Firuza's game. Oh, it's going crazy. So knight takes, g5, and this is those casual positions where you feel that, oh, it's nothing opposite colored bishops, but the fact is, it's getting wild after a while. d8, e5, takes, king e6, c5. But actually, after these pawns have been fixed, it's much easier to play it with black, and unless this rook can get behind the flanks, Anand will have a good play here with h5 and g4. And it's much harder to break through with a4, b5, as let's say, I'll go rook g8. And if you go rook a1, I can always play bishop a4. You can't ever pass through these squares. So Anand is definitely safe here, and he is the only one who can call some shots if he wants to. It's definitely Anand to try. Let's see. Yeah, so here actually Firuza is struggling and will be kind of waiting in the corner. Von Hoffman is saying, you're speaking too early, don't you remember Anand's game against Fabi? I remember, but objective truth is objective truth. I mean, I understand that Anand did make mistakes previously, but that doesn't mean that objectively his position shouldn't be for two results, meaning either winning or drawing. Now, he can overpush. I'm not saying he can't overpush. But if he plays according to position, that's unlikely to happen. So rook g8, h5, g4 would be my idea, just to get rid of that f pawn. And then f5, f4 would be something of a big chance for Anand to go for. And I don't know what he would do. b6. Now, b6 is a move very much what I wouldn't have expected and feels a lot like maybe Van Hoffman isn't wrong after all. Hello there, G Spades. Hello. Okay, so b6 I feel is a little bit counterproductive. Yes, he's trying to get rid of this and get the b file. On the other hand, that's not the side you should be playing on. You should be playing on the king side and not the queen side. And I feel that definitely it's still like Anand didn't spoil anything. But why play on the side where Firuza is stronger? But b6, it doesn't mean that this is not a strong move. It's just I don't find it that logical. bc is still coming, so that's still annoying. Maybe bishop c3 comes as an idea after exchange bishop b4. But to be honest, still, it is white who's struggling. And definitely Anand is pressing. And alright, we have moves in the Carlsen game. And I told you, Carlsen is going to go all in. He had the choice of repeating with bishop c4 check and bishop d5. but obviously he wants to win the game. Very interesting. Now I could check and take that guy, knight e1, but then you lose this piece. In fact, you'll be down some material after that. And don't forget that Duda has 20 minutes left and thinking. So if I can't really move my knight because the h6 pony falls, let's go rook d1. If I go e4, I can still take on f4, and that's no good news. Now as I move my rook, I will have jumps of knight e7, knight takes d5, taking your bishop and finally getting rid of this very, very volatile pony that kind of was the main issue this whole game. So, rook d1 was played. Now I could try knight h2 check, probably still forcing a draw. Like check here, check. You really don't want to go that way because then you run into all kinds of nasty discoveries. So you wouldn't want to do that. You're probably going to go back and forth on f1. Oh, no. Rook d1. So knight h2, then I just repeat. But this knight is still stuck. Knight g4 is a way to go, but then maybe e4. So rook d8 makes sense. Just bring the rook into the game. If you go here, I always take the knight. If you go knight g4, I can maybe play e4 here, and then suddenly the other knight is stuck. So this is still a game, honestly. You go here, I go rook f8, and I say, okay, maybe if you get really active or activate yourself, but my knight is actually putting a lot of pressure on your position. I think this is still playable. Any questions from chat? Yeah, rook d8 was played. I completely agree with Magnus. I know that sounds funny, but it's true. I think this knight can go to g4, but then I'll play e4, and then rook f8, and it's still a fighting game. Magnus is going for it, and that's totally reasonable. He has to also. Because, as we see, Caruana is near winning. He's up a pawn, played queen h4 with this very nice tactic. You can't take on d4 because queen a1 wins. Rook g1 had to be played, rook d8. Note that everything's on dark squares. And Fabiano is heading towards victory. Now, if he's winning, the only way that Carlsen could catch him if he wins himself. Also, knight f5, knight g3 is in the air, as my knight will be taboo because your queen is hanging. Maybe I could go for queen e1, but the problem, these pawns are so weak on e5 and f3, it's unlikely to be ending in a draw. Queen e1, I could even go queen h5, hitting both on f3 and e5. And to be honest with you, after the fall of the e5 pawn, this is just completely over. And I see no reason for this position to be not just completely winning. Yeah, Fabiano is dominating. But let's see how Carlsen does. So rook d8. Could it be that the crazy move d takes e5 is good? Could it be? It makes sense actually, because if I can get my bishop out, I'll be doing fine. Okay, let's look at this crazy move. D, E. Now if you check, I'll just waltz back and forth with king G1, king F1, so I'm not scared of that. You check here, I'll go here, and I still have pressure on your knight. Rook E5, bishop F4. Yes, Lazic, they have 2 games after this one. That's true. So knight E7 check was played. Takes. Takes on D5. Oh, bishop E4. What a majestic find. So if rook takes, bishop E4, and I double attack your rook and the knight. Ah. So that's a great find here. Yeah, Fabiano is not just a great player, he's a great gentleman as well. So now, actually, Magnus will have to walk a tightrope. I guess knight takes. Just eliminating this f3 knight and taking on d5. Promote. Because if I take bishop d5, bishop e4, threatening bishop d5, that's not much you can do about it. And suddenly you have problems. So knight d4, double attacking on c2, and this knight on d5. Can I go bishop e4? Maybe I could go bishop e4. Just stabilizing. Maybe then there's knight e6, defending, also pinning you, and I have knight g5, knight c5 ideas, trying to destabilize you. And if bishop d2, I might just go knight g5, and suddenly my attack is becoming real. This is actually very playable for Magnus. So knight d4 might be an interesting idea. There could be c takes here. I could even try bishop e4 you take. So d, have pressure here. If I ever get my bishops out, it's actually white who will have a slight pull, but that bishop is so passive at the moment. You can't really do that. Okay, so de. Note I can't take on e5 because bishop f4, so I'm gonna take, king g5 maybe, and I'm gonna take e5 at the end. This looks like an even position. Go bishop d2 with bishop idea of getting my bishop out, or bishop f3. Bishop f3, I might even go crazy on you. Go knight e5, takes, and knight d3. And note that because of this bishop being so passive, I actually have counterplay against your king. Even if you start winning some extra pawns, your king is so vulnerable, there'll be some scary moments. There'll be some very scary moments here. Duda is super Polish, man. He is very Polish. So we're still here thinking about the position, but this is going to go down the wire because Carlsen really needs to win this game to keep in contention. Multic says, yes, does Magnus Carlsen dare play knight f takes d4? There's no way he's not going to play knight takes d4. I think he's a little bit shocked. I think he might have missed this idea of bishop e4. So he's kind of pondering what to do. It's not much else black can do, actually. Because if I go d and get the chance to get my bishop out on f4, you're done for. So that's kind of putting you in the situation that some tactical sacrifices must be made here, or something very concrete, because after D, bishop f4, it's over. But let's take a look at the nicest guy of super grandmasters, Fabiano Caruana. Queen f1, g6, rook g4, queen e7. And yeah, Kovalyov is likely to win that pawn, even though if you take, I might even consider playing h5 and that rook will be kind of stuck there. So I can consider taking with queen e5 or h5. Both cases, this is very bad news for white because this bishop, apart from being charged by this pawn, is doing not much. And once I get my rook on the first rank, it's game over. And this both the rook and bishop is funny here. So queen e5 was played. Rook g4 would run into f5 fork. That would be nasty and the end of the game. Rook h4 was played. Probably the only move possible. And the question is, so A, I could bring my rook to an open file and try to win the game that way, or try to chase around your rook. I could play f5 as well, but then there'll be some other issues. So, I mean, f5 is very committal. f5 would actually say this move is winning and I dare weaken my king. But maybe it's something that you shouldn't do if you're not sure. I kind of feel rook c8 makes the most sense. Or knight e6 was played. Similar ideas. He might actually want to bring the knight to f4, but also activating the rook to d1 or d2. Now d1 is actually protected, but it's still an idea. Anytime this queen moves, it becomes reality. And this is a key game. If he wins the game, he comes extremely close to winning the whole tournament. He's a half point ahead of Carlsen. And if that actually materializes and Carlsen cannot win, he's probably winning the tournament with 2 rounds to go. I mean, it's not a fact yet, but it's very tough to catch up with Fabi also having white the next game. Knight e6. And honestly, you can find on in this type of positions with white, but the result seems 90% sure it's a victory for Fabiano. Maybe queen c1. Just trying to set up some pseudo threats. Also stopping queen g5. But in each and every case, this looks very bad. But let's go back to the Carlsen game. Knight d4 was played. Well, if you put a super grandmaster to task and saying, hey, you've got one move to play, other moves are bad for you, guess what? They're going to find it. They're good. They're really good. So the point of knight takes d4 was to get rid of a weak knight on f3, sacrifice it because you're going to take on d5 later. Knight c7, then I have knight c2, taking a piece, attacking your rook and the other rook on d1. So now Carlsen has 21 minutes against Duda's 15. And here both bishop e4 and c takes d4 is an option. Bishop e4 is more solid, but can be more dangerous because more pieces on the board, and this parking garage still is filled with pieces with the rook on a1 and the bishop on c1. So probably c takes d4 is the safest option for Duda. If he's trying to go for more, probably bishop e4 is the move with bishop d2, bishop e1, but that's what it should be. And meanwhile, there were some moves. Rook h3, knight f4 played. in the Fabiano game. This knight is desperately trying to get back and get into play, but this looks very lost, to be honest with you. Let's take a quick peek while Fabiano is wrapping up. It's not much actually. Let's just stay here. Fabiano is actually wrapping up the game. Look at this dominating move. Sometimes when you have a winning position, it's enough to have domination. And you don't necessarily need to find a winner move. In fact, the position is so dominating that Kovalyov resigned and Caruana won. So let's take the moment to take a look at the Firouzja game. b6, h4. Firouzja is trying to actually get around and behind the enemy camp. h6 takes 6. And I wonder if I can go rook h1 and rook e7. Okay, rook h1. Yes, g4 is an idea, and running to that could be nasty. Can't take because my rook would be hanging. But my point is I'm willing to give up the pawn just so I can activate my guys. Let's say you take. Which way should we take? Should we take gf or play g3? Actually, g3 could make sense as well, promoting the idea of promotion. But I guess I have rook g7 then, and just winning the pawn. If you go here with the idea of forking, if I take, I have f4. And suddenly, it's white who's playing for an advantage. Let's say takes. Say takes. I can't go d7 because there's still bishop c6 attacking that pawn. But I have rook e7 check. King f5. And d7 that you still just in time. But d7 is already like a real threat because rook e8 is something huge. So if even you just make a random move, rook e8 would be winning. Because not only I'm queening, I'm winning, I'm queening cleanly. You can't even stop me from queening. You can't even sack the rook. But after d7, obviously there's bishop c6, safeguarding that e8 square and attacking that d7 pawn. So here maybe rook c7 is an idea, promoting with d7, rook c8. Both c6 and d7 is coming, and actually now white is so active that this could be very, very playable for white. He could even play for a win if black is not careful. So king e6 I can even repeat, but I don't necessarily have to. I can play d7. King e7, cb, and I'm still not sure if white is any worse anymore. So I think rook h1, rook h7 will actually put Anand to task yet again. And maybe von Hoffmann was actually talking about the truth. Never give up on your winning hopes. It's never too late to win a game. And it might not be objectively the best way of playing for white, but practically so I think is the best try. Maybe actually Firouzja doesn't. So after g4 this works, but maybe Anand should start activating his pieces instead with rook b8 and rook b5. Note that I'm still attacking on b2. And if I get to win the c5 pawn, obviously it'll be only Anand who's playing for a win. But look, still, whenever you have a bad position, try to activate all of your pieces. And, worst off, at least you tried. And I think that's kind of a good mentality. And I think that Firuza is not far from doing that. Kind of fine with playing that way. But let's go back to the Carlsen game. So takes, and indeed, Duda decided, okay, you know what? I'm still lagging in development. I should really exchange stuff now, DE, and get this bishop out. Now, as we look at these Tata Steel games, we note that Carlsen is on the upsurge these days. So he's trying his best to win it. So rook d1 takes king g5, and yeah, white has the bishop there, but it's much more passive than in like an initial position. Look at that monster bishop pressing on f2. And as I showed you before, Carlsen is planning to activate this knight and post it on d3 so it can mount even more pressure on f2. Question is, how can Duda react? And to be honest with you, I kind of like the way Duda played. Duda fought and how Carlsen played. He didn't take the draw. Is the position equal? Probably. Does Duda need to work for the draw? Yes, he does. Now, if we would want to win this pawn, we can't really do it. Because if h4, I can always play king f5, safeguarding this pawn. You could give another check, but I can take that pawn on e5 or even just go king g4. And there's no more check after bishop d1 f3. And in fact, I made progress and your king is more in danger than my king on g4 because your rook is still stuck on a1. So that's why h4 is not such a great idea. So the moves that I would be thinking about is bishop f3, trying to put pressure on these pawns on b7 and a6 and the knight on c6, or bring the bishop out quickly as possible to d2. Yeah, Evelyn, yeah, thank you. I noticed that they traded. So bishop d2 though, I feel this is a little slow. I have knight takes c5, and when I would just reach c3, knight d3 immediately hits on f2, and this is very comfortable for Carlsen, and I'd even claim that this is an advantage Carlsen. And even if I would be black, I would try to play this on forever. Because look at all those majestic pieces putting pressure. My king is active, and as we all know, in endgames that counts for a lot. So I kind of feel that bishop f3 is an interesting try in this position. Even though I do like this idea of knight d5 takes and knight d3. Hitting on f2, have rook e1 check threats, which are quite brutal. So bishop d2 I think is a must, defending. And I guess knight f2 makes sense. I can take on h3, but also sooner or later this f-pawn could actually become a monster. Let's say takes. But if you take, now I can go to e4 unharmed. This will be very nasty. If you move the bishop, I'll start pushing my pawn, and this is almost game over because I'm mating you on g3 and f2 is coming. And this is what I call piece domination. Yes, white has a lot of things, pawns up everything, but that f-pawn is unstoppable. So I do feel that Carlsen is putting Duda to a test, and this is by all means playable, even in some ways practically better for black. h4 was played, which I don't like, honestly. King f5, it actually brings the king to a better place, and I don't think this h-pawn is that dangerous. It might even just become a target. Okay. I don't really like this one. So I feel that Carlsen is still the one pressing. Bishop c2. I think king g4 f3 is coming. And that's kind of good for Carlsen. But let's take a look at the Firouzja game. As I've been told that Firouzja is flagging. Well, he's not yet flagging. He has 4 minutes against 24 with 7 moves to go. That's a lot. It's a big discrepancy. So, let's take a look at this position. King f2. Someone's asking why not bishop a4. Bishop a4 is definitely a move. The big question is if this endgame is winning for black or not. So note that this square is on dark squares. That means if Firouzja manages to exchange this bishop for all of these pawns, then the game will be drawn. Wait, actually that's not entirely true. Let's talk about that for a little bit. So here, f5, let's make a big mistake here for black. Actually, it's not necessarily clear. Okay, king e6. I'm just going to give up these pawns for the bishop. Okay. This is actually trickier. Because yes, normally this would be a draw. But if I can make you stalemated, I can force you to play b5. King d3, king a1. Can I do this? Probably I barely can't. Because anytime I will try to stalemate you like this way. Oh. Like when I will be trying to stalemate you and play king b3, let's say I manage it somehow. You will always give up the a pawn first. And that's the problem. And after king a4, I'm just drawing. So the idea that I was thinking, maybe if you can force me to play b5, a takes b5, and then it's a win for black. But okay, this is all theoretical. So note that Anand didn't want to go for this one, decided to go rook b8 instead, saying that this rook d6 endgame is very drawish-like. If Firouzja manages to exchange those bishops, probably it's a draw. So he claims that this is more likely to be a win with the rook on the board. So he's trying to start pushing the pawns in the future. So you could go bishop c6. You can't really move your rook because then I'll take you. He actually played rook c8. So first off, he activates the rook, and then he will start pushing the pawns. What probably he's going to do, I'm just going to make some moves. He's going to make sure that his pawns are not immobile. So let's say here, f5. And the idea and the reason I brought the bishop to c6 first is that I could play e4 takes and take with the bishop later. Or the rook. My point is I want to be able to swiftly push these pawns, f and g pawns, and then the game is likely to be a win. Hello there, Palem. So I've got a question from Chess on Earth. Why would white make a mistake, especially at such a high level? To simplify, this looks like a draw. Well, Chess is a tough game. Anand actually has lost a winning position before, or at least very promising position against Caruana. And guess who's in the lead? Fabiano is in the lead, who is very likely to extend his lead if not Carlsen winning a game, which looks fairly even. So even at this high level, you can make mistakes and things can happen because we're all human after all. And I know they're the greatest humans, but they're the greatest humans. Chess on Earth. So it's never too late to make a mistake, but Anand is trying to be conscious of that, and that's why he's avoiding the exchange of rooks. And sometimes you can't really tell if a position is winning or drawn. Sometimes you just come up with the conclusion that, okay, that's more likely to be a draw. So yeah, this is what Anand is doing. Something similar to what I suggested. He's not rushing with the pawns. He's waiting to set up the best formation and then start pushing the pawns. Chess on Earth. So the reason I'm showing and I like mistakes because I'm trying to pinpoint an idea. So it's not that I'm trying to show something that makes no sense at all. I'm trying to show that that is something somebody could play for. I hope that makes some sense. So yeah, bishop c6, and then he's trying to push the pawns. And Duda is in some sort of trouble. Okay. I do feel Anand is the one who's pressing here. Can Firouzja draw? Probably there's a chance. But with the rooks on the board, it's less likely. But okay, let's take a look at the Carlsen game. And I don't like the way Duda played. Actually, h4, he was actually bringing this king closer, pushed this f3 all the way up, so his king cannot move. Bishop g5, knight d5. He has 6 minutes for 3 moves. And also, if this rook ever manages to get to d2, which I understand is blocked by this bishop at the moment, this is very risky for Duda. And to be honest with you, I feel that there's a good chance of this being lost by the Polish player. Knight e5. So rook e6. This rook maneuver makes sense. Also, knight d3 is a huge threat. So I guess I should try to activate my bishop and go bishop c2 or maybe rook c1. Rook c1 would be this typical Rook c1 would be this typical Duda move, hoping that all tactics work out. Now you'd say, oh my god, knight d3, rook e1, and you're mated. Your rook is hanging. But this is typical Duda play, all well calculated. He notes that, oh, but I check you, and I take on f3. And if this works, it's marvelous. But if it doesn't work, it's terrible. And maybe it's terrible because my king goes to h3, takes away that g2 square, and rook e1 is now deadly. Bishop f3, which would be the point, loses to rook e1, checkmate. And if bishop d2, I can maybe even munch on f2, and your king is still in some precarious situations. Queen knight f2, and even if you take on f3, rook f8, this looks very, very dangerous. But this is, again, typical Duda game. He goes for the most forcing variation and hopes it all works out. I mean, he calculates it, of course, but but it's living life dangerously, to put it mildly. And to be honest with you, I might expect rook c1 to be played here, because that kind of fits Duda. Also rook c1, maybe bishop f2 is an idea here. Strangely enough, my pawn and king is so strong, my pieces are so strong, I get to give up 2 pieces for the rook. So let's say takes, check, this one's coming, can't go here because that's mate, check, and then I take on c1 and I will win the game as this bishop's hanging. Bishop c2 is played, so even Duda gave up on the idea such as rook c1. And to be honest with you, rook c1 would be super ambitious. Bishop c2 is a bit more complacent, just trying to defend against that intrusion on b3. What do I think about Vladislav's position, Kovalev's? I think he's losing because he lost. So you like more concrete observations, chess on earth. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. So bishop c2, stopping this knight d3 idea. But what about knight c4? I'm trying to get my rook on e2 while attacking this b2 guy. I don't have any tactics because I don't have any pieces left to do tactics with. So probably knight c4. Rook e1. Rook e2 would be kind of nasty. Do I really want to exchange? No, but if I go here, then check and I lose my knight. So that's not a better option. Takes. Maybe bishop g6. I'm still guarding that and maybe hoping to push this pawn later because this king is still putting pressure on that bishop. But just bishop d4 and we'll start pushing my pawn, defending that square. To be honest with you, this looks just great. Oh, Artemyov. Okay. Haven't checked that. Let's see. So maybe there's some counterplay here for white. But after knight c4, it is still very clear that it's Carlsen who's calling the shots. Will it be a draw? Not sure. Knight d. If you play bishop d3 here, I'll take on b2. And then your bishop's hanging and rook e2 is coming. So it's basically game over. So it's kind of clear that rook e1 is the only move. You don't have time for anything else. Other than that, rook e2 would be near deadly. So you don't want to face that. By the way, dear chat, if you have any suggestions to which game I should be looking at, do let me know. Both Lichess and ChessVeeb channel viewers, do let me know if there's a game that you'd be interested to take a look at. So by now, I think Carlsen did achieve something and some sort of an initiative. Will it be enough? That's a good question. I don't know. Can we peek at Artemyov's game? Yes, sir. So this is also a game that is of importance. Fun for us, Jordan has been kind of hiding under the radar. But the thing is, Jordan can still make it to the podium, or if he would win by a miracle, which I don't think will happen this game, he could still be in contention for first. Maybe that's a little far-fetched, but he could definitely be up for one to second and third. Second and third is still possible. Even a draw, he would be still tied. But the issue is, this pawn on f5 is very weak, and these pawns, even though they're in a bunch, they could be endangered. Thank you for the follow, Edcon. So probably rook f8 would be my idea, just defending this guy. Also, let's count pawns. That's always worth it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So white is up a pawn. This is going to be very nasty for Jordan. Maybe knight c4 actually makes some sense. Just go all in, give up the f5 pawn, but just find some counterplay against the a and b pawns. Takes, let's say I take here and go knight c2, put pressure on the b pawn. But on the other hand, I do feel that even after a4, it's still Artemyov who's trying to go for a win. And I don't really think that this is that easy to hold for Jordan, especially because of these pawn structures. Thank you for the follow, Crazy Monkey. So honestly, this is still very, very annoying, especially after rook f8. I have knight e6, forking you, forcing you to take on d1, takes, and let's say rook e8. You can't even go rook f7 because rook d8 finishes the game immediately. Rook e8, and I even have rook d8 if I want to simplify. But if I'm not that of a hurry, I can just go knight g5, and either I go rook d7 or rook d8, and the extra pawn and the weaknesses on the other side should probably be winning. Artemyov is from Russia, yes. So honestly, I feel that Artemyov is probably on the winner's side. Is it easy? Not necessarily, because Forrest can have some sort of counterplay, but probably on a closer inspection, I feel this should be a win for Artemyov. I actually wasn't paying attention to the clock, but Forrest has 4 minutes against, 4 minutes against nearly 10. And I feel that this will be just a clean win for Artemyov. That will actually boost Artemyov a bit on the list. He will be up on 5th place with 5.5 points. That's pretty good. At least decent. But I see moves being played in the other game. So let's head on back to the Carlsen game. So takes, rook e1 takes, as predicted. This is played. So if bishop g6 trying to promote, I can go bishop d4, and this is nearly winning. Because you're not going to promote anytime soon, and even my king can walk to g2. So bishop g6, then bishop d4. So maybe bishop f6 makes a good point, trying to take away this d4 square and then hoping to push the pawn then. So bishop f6, knight c4 is only move. Yep, bishop f6 was played. Knight c4, note I can't really go anywhere else. And now bishop g6. Potential ideas for Carlsen. Carlsen can go king g2 and try to take on f2. And just try to nurse this pawn into a lady. Any other ideas? Well, you could do this slower way of just stopping this h-pawn from promoting, but that looks a little bit passive. Let's look at the active way of playing. King h3. Note I won't get mated because you just don't have checks on this side of the board. h5, king g2. h6. Check here. So here I'm actually going all in with black. Bishop e3. Now, you don't have time to do that because I'll take that h-pawn in a hurry. f2, but bishop d3, and I'm a goner because you queen, and I can't queen at all. Okay, so this plan does not work. Knight c4, this was played. Bishop g6 is likely to be played here. I could go knight d6, knight f5, stopping that maneuver. Okay, let's say knight d6. I could try bishop e5 here, going for the endgame. And like, let's say if you takes, because of the opposite colored bishops, this is likely to be a draw. So maybe even bishop e5 is an idea. h5, knight f5. On the other hand, it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure I see a way to move forward from here. This knight note can't really move forward anymore because h6, h7 is coming, and that's a big plan there. Hello, Cabbage Man. Geary Drew, yes, Evelyn. Hello, Crazy Monkey. How's it going? So yeah, Artemyev is near winning, but Carlsen probably, even though trying, I'm not sure if he's going to win this game. Because these bishops are kind of strong. And meanwhile, the plan of pushing with the h-pawn is a real threat. So apron chess, Firouzja made time control, but it's looking tough for him. Okay. So, let's take a look at this one. So we left it off here. Rook c4, king g3, and rook c8. Interesting. So actually, Anand is trying not to rush, which is very important. He says, okay, I'm in no hurry. I'm still much better. You make a move. So king f2, and now he decides to go all around and behind this bishop. Oh, I'm still trying to make it with this arrow, but I just can't do it. King g3, rook h1, rook b1. And so Anand decides to mobilize this rook and put pressure on this b2 bishop. Bishop c6. Point being, if bishop c3, haha, rook b3, and I'll put pressure on all of your guys, which will be very annoying. What's the idea for going the bishop? So this is the idea. If there's bishop c3, I can actually attack all of your pawns and bishops. This is naturally a triple attack, and probably this position is just winning. King f2 was played, and maybe in some sense Firouzja is in Tsutswan. Can't really make a lot of moves. Felpe, thank you for following. Now the question is how to move forward. Because yeah, white cannot move, but can black capitalize on that? Note, you can't really push with e4 because I can start pushing my d-pawn. That would not be enough. You can try and play f5. Thank you for the follow, Pangitos. f5. But maybe I have tactics, actually. Suddenly. And that's why it's good to do your tactics, people, boys and girls. Because takes d7, and now it's drawn. That's it. Takes, and we're drawing. I think maybe rook b3. But I'm still kind of bent on the idea that this is very close to equal. I will start checking you. But even here, like bishop e5, there are real chances of drawing. So even though Anand has a good position, it's by no means over. Hi there, El Rosador. So Caruana has just won. Carlsen is still fighting to be in contention, but it's not necessarily clear if he's going to make it. And anyone who's just joining, hello there. I'm Grandmaster Dennis Bosch, and you can check out our Discord and Facebook if you so want to join. We actually do look at some recent games in our other streams. And in fact, on Saturday, we're going to have Chess Lab, looking at opening variations and trying to solve some of them, especially for subs. So, it's not that easy for Anand to do any damage for Firuza's position, interestingly. So f5 runs into some tactical tricks. e4 doesn't really work yet. So maybe king d7 is an idea. And now you could try e4, but then the f6 pawn is hanging. So even here, it's not entirely clear what's going to happen. So for Chess Lab, as Ojas is asking, when is the Chess Lab? So they'll be at around 11 a.m. CT, and a later one at 7. That is the plan. There might be some little tweaks on those times, but that's the plan. So, actually it's not that easy to move forward. So probably I would bring my rook back. I think this plan just didn't work. King d7 was played. And I feel that there's a little bit of hesitation on Anand's side, which is understandable. Hello, Triple H. How's it going? So, let's see. Let's see what's going on in the Duda game. So indeed, as we predicted, bishop g6. And this is what makes Duda such a great player. He's very aggressive and very much on point. He's always looking for the best active way of playing. Now he's trying to go h5, h6, and in this way probably he will be able to hold. Will he suffer tremendously? Will he actually lose the game? Not sure. Possibly. But I want to ask chat, what is your impression? Will Carlsen pull it off? The chess chat? Chess Veep chat? What do you think? Will Carlsen win this game? So Carlsen played bishop c5. Bishop is heading back to f8. Point if f5, bishop f8, just stopping that square. Carlsen is going for c6. Yes, c5, f8, yes. Zansetsu says, you believe that it's going to be a draw, but there'll still be a grind ahead? Yes, I kind of agree. So Carlsen is trying to park a bishop on h6. He manages, actually. Then that could be annoying. Let's say h5, bishop f8, just blocking that square. Also note that it takes away Duda's g7 square, where this bishop would love to have, and then you could start pushing with h6, h7. Bishop f8. This square is taken. Question how to continue with white. Now, the black king can't really capture it, but bishop h6 could be an idea. So let's try to get some counterplay with bishop f7. Multic says if Carlsen can trade the knight for the white bishop, he has the upper hand. Of course, that's a correct statement. But obviously, Duda's big compensation is the bishop pair here. Hello, Sir Papai. Bishop f7. I want to bring this knight closer to this pawn, so I'm going to go knight d6. And again, bishop d5 would run into c6, and then I could take on h5. So this doesn't work. If you have to go back, I actually achieved something. Although I do have bishop e5, and as we talked before, if I manage to exchange this dark squared bishop, then the endgame is drawn because of the opposite colors. And in fact, bishop f7 was played immediately. So bishop c5 was played, with the idea of getting here. Someone was suggesting to get the bishop on f4. Well, if it would be legal, I'm sure that Carlsen would do that, but it's impossible at the moment. Bishop f7, kind of attacking this knight. If knight d6, I might even think about moves as bishop e7. Oh no, then there's knight takes f7. That's not a good idea. Because I can take and take on h4, and that's not an opposite colored bishop endgame that white is banking on. So bishop f7, let's promote that. Knight d6. I guess I'll check you. And probably will start attacking the f3 pawn. Check. You want to be around this h pawn, because if you go king f4, this pawn goes for it, goes for the run, and that's no good. But after bishop e7, I think the game is immediately drawn, because I'll be able to win some pawns. Let's say I pass, takes, bishop c8, and I'll start taking pawns. That game is just drawn. So bishop f7, but still knight d6 seems the most ambitious here. Triple H, I'm not sure I understand. What do you think about the Carlsen G6 move? Oh, I think that one. We'll go back to that one a little bit later, if that's fine with you. Sir Papa is asking, opposite colored bishop with 2 pawns up is still a draw? Yes, a lot of times even 2 pawns up is still a draw. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, let me make a normal move for black. Let's say a b6, takes. Thing is, as we talked about before, this a pawn, this a pawn is on the right color now. Oh, that makes a difference. This actually could be dangerous, but even here, even if that color is good, that's not certain you're winning. Because let's say a5, I just need to build the perfect fortress. Here, and if I get my pawn to a4, my king to b5, it's a draw. And again, I know some of you don't like hypotheticals, but in these bishop endgames, it matters. Because just if I can set up that sort of fortress, it doesn't matter what you do. It's a draw. Because even though there's 2 pawns, you can't really mobilize it. And if you can't mobilize it, it's just a draw. If I can block it with my king and the bishop on the white squares, you can't pass through it. So bishop f7, we're still looking at this move. There haven't been a move yet, as of yet. And to be honest with you, I think that's what we're going to see here. Black is, of course, much better, but is he winning? Probably closer to draw. Meanwhile, Wesley, million years ago made a draw, which is kind of okay. He's going for one of the second to fourth places, and he's not trying to take many risks. I mean, obviously, we'd be happier to see more games and more aggressive games, but probably was tired. And don't forget, this is round 11, and they've been playing long, grueling games. So, in this sense, some of these draws are somewhat acceptable. I think it's kind of okay. Let's look at the Artemyev game. Oh, lots have changed. Wow, Fun Forest. Let's see what he did. So he did this knight c4 idea that we suggested, putting pressure on the a3 pawn. Knight takes f5, knight takes a3, and he did exactly what I was saying. Go for counterplay. Don't give up, go for counterplay. He's going for these queenside pawns, and even though Artemyev has this extra pawn, it does not mean it's going to be over. Rook c1, king g8, bring your king closer to the center, as is the endgame by now. Knight d6, rook e7, knight f5, and this is typical playing against time kind of play, which is never good news and never a great idea. Probably should have brought his king himself or start playing f3, e4 just to gain time. Meaning using and playing for your advantage. This was more playing on time, and suddenly Jordan has play against these pawns. He owns the only very important d file, and the king is coming in. So this is clear play for the pawn. g4, king f7, king g2, rook d2, knight c2. And suddenly, black has real play. If Jordan wins this game, he will be still lurking in the back and might even get the chance for 1 to 3. I don't even rule out 1 to 3 places. Don't forget, Jordan van Forest has already played against everybody. He played Magnus, he played Firuza. He played Firuza and he played Fabiano. So if he were to win this game, he could make a big leap forward. Now maybe I'm getting over myself and probably Artemyev is still better. But look at the tendencies, and sometimes tendencies do matter. Artemyev is being going downhill with the precision. Now, if he could still find some precise moves, like knight d6 and try to win that pawn, maybe, but even let's say here, I go here, and I take on b4. Yes, you have extra pawn on the other side, but I will start pushing my pawns and this knight looks a little bit weird. So there's a big chance here for Forrest to actually survive this game. And to be honest with you, this is real counterplay. So don't count out Jordan yet. Jordan is coming. Well, let's go back to the Carlsen game. Bishop f7. Not much has happened yet. Probably just equal. Somebody jump scared me that Duda is winning. No, not at all. Carlsen is more than enough in time to stop you from playing h6. I'm just gonna go knight d6, knight f5, bishop f8. There's no way that Carlsen can lose this, and is not going to do so. That's for sure. Sir Popeye says, Caruana is playing really well, getting lucky too. I think he will run away with it. Now, obviously, he's very close to clinching the tournament. He had a half-point lead, and he might be increasing it, but you never know. Carlsen, if he manages to pull this one off, he might get closer. But for that, he needs to win. So let's go back to the Firouzja game. Let's see how Anand does. So he tried to go behind, put pressure on this bishop, but then realized he can't really do anything substantial. King g3, and now decided to go rook f1. And interestingly enough, Firouzja didn't go rook f2, but played rook d3 instead. And that's probably some sort of concession. And I'll tell you why in a second. If you go rook f2, you're saying, okay, I'm trusting that this endgame is drawn. When you go rook d3, you'll be stuck on the third rank forever. So probably rook d3 was some sort of a mistake, because then the rook cannot move from there. It has to stay there, when in fact this rook was very well placed on the second rank. And it will be on the third. You will have issues with your bishop. B, you can't really move with your king. And if you do, then you might run into g4 ideas. So this can actually become very dicey after rook d3. I think rook d3 could be a real mistake. So rook d3, king e6. Now this is the problem. Go king g2, I go rook b1, now I attack your bishop and g4 is coming. So this is kind of the position where you don't anticipate double attacks, but this is like a pseudo double attack. Meaning your bishop is hanging and my latent threat is g4. Now you can't really defend against both, or you give up the d pawn. But if you give up the d pawn, it's game over. So rook d2, then g4, and then I just take, because this is a pin which you can't deal with. This is just bad news. So king e6. And now white is in Zugzwang. You can't really make any moves. So maybe rook f2 is not much better at Kong, as you have rook d1, that's true, but at least you keep your fortress, maybe. But with rook d3, I do feel that you will eventually run into Zugzwang. So I feel this will be a win for Anand, as you can't move the king because of the aforementioned idea, and you can't wait long because then the d6 falls. Probably in both cases the position was pretty bad at Con. That's the fact. But let's go back to the Carlsen game. What's going on? Nothing has happened since. Okay, let's look at the Artemyov Firouzja then. Oh no, Artemyov Jordan van Forest. My bad. Oh. So the question is, now sometimes knight d6 was played, b5, sometimes you're happy to give away tripled pawns, but here c takes b5, and actually these pawns would be fairly menacing. You wouldn't expect these pawns to be so strong, but this time it would be kind of annoying. But for clear reason, he played knight d6 and rook takes d6. Honestly, rook takes d6 might be a little bit too correct. But the problem is not that. So knight b7 is not a problem. The problem is knight c4 back, hitting the rook. You go here, king f3, and you have no place to defend your rook because it's captured. So that was the problem. So Jordan was forced to take on d6. He still has counterplay, but no more winning chances. With the knights on the board, like let's say here, there was still some hope for swindling chances for Jordan. But here, not really, not anymore. Because anytime I can defend this pawn, and I will just start pushing my pawns. And they're connected too. So that's no good news. King e6. Jordan is still trying to come up with the king, but after f4, king f3, I think that this will be no good news for Artemyov. I mean, for Jordan. Artemyov is going to probably win this game. Let's see what's going on here. I guess maybe I can try bishop c3. This doesn't look good. Also note that the king might actually be encircled. I could even go f5 here. You don't really have rook e3 anymore. And f4 could be coming as well. Does bishop e5 work though? Takes d7. So that's again not ready. Maybe bishop c3 is the best try here. Again, if e4 takes, I have these d7 ideas. Yeah, maybe bishop c3 would have been the best way of playing. Firouzja played king g4. Wow. This just doesn't look right. I guess he's stopping f5 because he can take. But I don't know. Just this king seems to be wandering off a little bit too much. For my taste, at least. On the other hand, again, Anand can't really make too much progress because if e4 you take, maybe you could try that. e4 takes and check and rook e4, and then start pushing your pawn. Maybe that could make sense. Takes, check, and take. Ah, but I have bishop f6. Tactics, people, tactics. Again, I promote. So it's tricky. It's still very tricky. So even this doesn't work because of this sack and d7. So it's not over. It's not over. Okay, let's go back to the Carlsen game. And it was drawn. Oh, here. Bishop f7 probably was offered a draw in knight d6. I guess what we kind of predicted happened, that bishop e7 is coming. White is going to win that pawn, and we get into this groovy endgame, and it's a draw. There's not much going on over there. So they just decided. That means that Caruana is a full point ahead, which is big news. Probably that will be it. Probably we can crown him the champion. But there's still 2 rounds left, so maybe, just maybe, if he can win 2 more games, Carlsen does, he can go for the title. As far as I know, and chat, both ChatStream and Lichess, do let me know. Is it true if they tie, then they have a playoff? Let me even search that, because that's important information. So Carlsen is still playing a game with white against Artemyov and a game against Vesely with black. Yeah. That it ain't that likely. Tsutswang TV, thank you for rating with a party of 9. I hope you had a great stream. Hello, Impact Blue. Good to see you all. We're just looking at the last games of the Tata Steel Championship. Caruana has just won his game against Kovalyov, and he's in the lead with a full 1 point. There was very hard times, very, very hard to do anything there. It was just winning. Carlsen actually fought a good game against Duda, but it ended up in a draw. We're mostly looking at the other game between Firuja and Anand. So here they agreed to a draw because if check, bishop e7, I'm going to take on d6 and win one more pawn and the game is drawn. Ding is not playing here, Van Hoffman, but there's a tournament Ding is going to play, and that's the candidates. And you ask, why isn't he playing? Well, really nobody knows, but my guess is some of the players are just preparing for the candidates tournament. Maybe a bit early, maybe, but sometimes you do have to start your preparation. And bishop e7. And this is a draw. I don't see what you could do here. So let's go back to the last game that's still going on. So king g4, rook b1, force everything back, rook f1. Whoa! What happened here? King g4, rook b1. So again, bishop c3, rook b3, and then I take the pawn. There are problems. So you can't do that. Rook d2. Check here. You can't take on f3 because d7 and I promote. Again, I keep showing this trick. I'll always have bishop f6 ideas in the end. So let's say, even if you just try to encircle this pawn, I have bishop f6, takes, and d7. You can't stop me. So check, king h3, and rook f1. Now, who's gonna defend you now? If you go here, I can get into the endgame. With 3 pawns, I'm confident this is winning. And yeah, so Firuja resigned because suddenly you can't defend that f-pawn anymore. Exactly, king g4 was a big mistake. It never felt right anyways. Like, waiting was better. And here I think what you could have done is bishop c3, e4 again, you can't really take it. And if you want to, let's say rook c1, if you try to go e4, let's say I pass. I don't know how I pass. Let's say king g4. Takes here. There's still some hope of holding this. But king g4 was just too much. Check. I mean rook b1, rook d2. And then after this, the f3 pawn is falling and it's game over. Yeah, Firuza was playing well, but then he was playing the world champions and the 2800 guys, and it kind of, things got sidetracked and got really bad. So I'm going to take a look at both of the games of Carlsen, and Firouzja. Meanwhile, if you just joined, hello there. If you want to be part of the ChessVeep channel, you can join us on Discord. Leave a follow if you like us or if you enjoyed this. And by the way, we're going to have a Saturday chess lab. For you to understand what a Saturday chess lab is, I'm going to give you a link that you might enjoy. Here's a chess lab that I did previously. We are looking and trying to solve opening problems for subscribers. And that's a link for a previous lab that we did. So rook f1, this was winning. So let's take a look now at the Caruana game. As we didn't have the chance. Let's flip the board. Let's see how Caruana did the magic. So e4, e5, very classical way of playing. And what's surprising is that Kovalyov actually played the main line. Before he usually played the Giuco piano, the more peaceful way of playing this position, and not the aggressive ones. So he played bishop b5, a6, knight f6, and bishop c5, the archangel that is. So normally, Fabiano would go for mainlands with bishop e7 castles. But this time he goes for the sharper one with bishop c5, c3, d6, a4. This is a big main line where black sacrifices the b5 pawn for big counterplay and pinnings and active bishops. So not AB. This is the main line, bishop g4, rook e1. So what Kovalyov is hoping for is to keep the extra pawn, even though he will have some loose pieces and will be pinned for a while in these type of positions. Rook e1, bishop f3. Now note that white is forced to take with gf, because if queen takes f3, black can just take on d4, takes, and black has a majestic pressure on the b file and an aggressive bishop on d4. So white is forced to take with gf, knight h5, and at first look, this looks like something outrageous, right? White has the bishop there, a big center, and is up a pawn. What are we talking about? Well, there's one important point here for black. What could be that important point? What makes this whole plan for Caruana feasible? Well, one thing is the weakened king on g1, but b, that f4 square is just crying to be occupied by these knights. And if black can create a black squared blockade, there's a good chance that black can actually take over. And yes, this bishop is monstrous on this diagonal, but on the other hand, this bishop on c1 is not as good. It's okay for the moment, it's a good defender, but apart from defense, it really doesn't do anything else. So that's why f4 is the main line. Now if you would play d5, that would be a terrible mistake, because that would close in your bishop, help my maneuver to get my knights to f4, and activate this guy on b6. Obviously, f4 is played for the reason of the idea of closing this bishop in and getting rid of the c1 bishop. Now black is forced to takes, and now the situation changed a little bit. This bishop is actually the one trapped because it's staring at the wall of pawns. And this bishop is the one that is much stronger. King h1, preparing ideas on the g file and also moving away from queen g5 checks and sort of stuff. Knight e7. So if we see this and we see this line of pawns in the center, how could we try to undermine it somehow? JT with the best answer ever. Because von Hoffman was asking, why does computer give zeros though? And JT with the right answer, don't trust the computers blindly. So at the moment, this feels like a slight advantage for white. And rightly so, you have a better bishop and a center. Maybe a slightly weakened king, but it's hard to get to it. Well, the issue is for black that this bishop is bad. Therefore, you will try to play and break with c5. Yes, Paulum 89, you're correct, and you will try to open it up that way. Bishop c2, knight g6. But first, and this is totally grandmaster play, you're trying to over-defend your weaknesses. Caruana had a weakness on f4, so he decides to go to g6 and make sure that pawn is defended. b4, trying to dissuade Fabiano from playing c5. c6. This knight was annoying. c5. A lot of times it would have pressure on that d6 square. Therefore, he first kicks this knight out and then plays c5. Von Hoffman says, you were trying to understand the computer's idea. Computers don't have ideas. They just see moves that they consider the best. They don't have any idea. They just think that that move at that moment should be the best. Is it the best? According to the statistics, yes, that is the best move. Now, do we always trust statistics? Of course. We only trust statistics. That's the only thing we trust ever. We only trust them. So c5, and this is like the human concept. Because first off, you're thinking, okay, I want to play c5, but can I improve on the move c5? Yes, I can. I can play c6, get rid of this knight, and then play c5. And to be honest with you, this is typical human play. c6, c5. And now, Fabi's idea becomes clear. He's trying to undermine this d4 square, and as soon as this d-pawn moves, he will own that e5 square and the advantage. bc, dc, and now there's real pressure on that d4 square. If you play d5, that is positionally just terrible, because after knight e5, technically you're lost. Which is interesting, an opening where after like very few moves, roughly 20, yeah, you're lost because these pieces are totally out of play. I have a clean attack on your king. c4 is threatened when I can activate my bishop, and then it's just game over. There's not much you could do there. And that's kind of tough to deal with. And here, therefore, Kovalyov decides to play knight c4. Well, in the first place, though, I don't understand why he took on c5. It just makes absolutely no sense. He should have tried knight c4, put pressure on the bishop, and keep this d-file closed. You don't want black to put lots of pressure on d4. That's not part of your play. It's something that you shouldn't be doing. So to be honest with you, Fabi is great, but here I think that there's one thing that he really shouldn't have done. Kovalyov was misplaying this terribly. And I think that's kind of bad. Should have tried knight c4 and keep the position closed. So takes, knight c4, but this was one bad move and it's over. C takes, rook d6, and now apart from this big pressure, the king is weakened, and if we're familiar with the ideas of chess, we'd be familiar with this concept as well. You're down. You're not down a pawn, but you will be if you play d5 again, knight e5 comes, and then you're just done for. Actually, I'd be just ready to jump over and play rook h6 then. So this is very dangerous, if you ask me. You don't want to see that happen. So rook a4 was played. Kovalyov is still trying. Knight e5, very nice. And that's why we know these tactics and use these tactics, because this knight is just so strong there. You can't really move the queen anymore, because there's knight f3 ideas. And now this attack is just mating. Meanwhile, so this is not just a threat, this is a mating threat. So that's a big problem. That's very hard to deal with there. So knight e5 was played, f3 trying to block that square, but then now knight c6 comes, and now you're either forced to play d5 or give up the d pawn. And technically, to be honest with you, it's over. Again, if d5, bam, and boom, knight e5, and you're positionally lost because your bishop is worth nothing. You have weaknesses on f3. My queen is joining the battle. This would be done. Just no chances there. So e5, rook takes d4, takes, knight takes d4, bishop e4. But now the game is technically over. But let's see how Caruana wins this game. Queen h4. Takes. So e5 is probably one of the best moves that Kovalyov could still play here. And this is interesting though, because e5, he says, okay, I'm giving away the pawn because I don't know what to do. I at least want to have some compensation here. So that's a good move by Kovalyov. Rook d4, takes, bishop e4. And notice that immediately Kovalyov pieces have greatly improved. And that's very important because a lot of times you just hunch back and give up the whole game. And that's what you shouldn't be doing. You should always try and fight on whenever you get the chance. That's what he does. Hey, Fortuna Chess Coach, how's it going? We're just looking through the games that were kind of important for this round. That is the Caruana game against Kovalyov and the Duda Carlsen game. Also, for those who haven't seen the Chess Lab, which we will do on this Saturday, here's a previous one that I did. We'll have two of those at 11 and 7. Kite the Joker is asking, why are Super GMs so much better at time management even in the openings? Because they know them so thoroughly. They know the concepts and they know whatever they need to know. They don't need time to figure it out. That's the difference. They already know it. So here is a question what to do. And now a lesser player would play, let's say, knight e6, saying, okay, I'm fine, I'm up a pawn, I don't need to be very aggressive. But Caruana knows how to deal with these type of situations, and he goes all in and tries to be as precise as possible. He spends 3 minutes and plays queen h4. And that's kind of a difference between an average Joe and Fabiano. He goes for the most aggressive move and is not content with a slightly better endgame. He's trying to get the maximum out of the position. And this is very strong. Note, you can't take on d4 because the e1 rook is hanging. Rook g1, rook d8. And notice that he's not wasting time. He puts all of his pieces on dark squares and is getting ready for knight f5, knight g3 ideas, which would work because your queen would be endangered. Queen f1, running away from this knight f5 idea. Just to show you, knight f5 is fairly brutal. You can't actually take there because it's defended by my queen. And then knight g3 check knight e4 is probably winning, as your king will be much too inconvenienced to survive. Queen f1, g6. Now, this is kind of the fun part of chess. Sometimes you have to play aggressive, and sometimes you have to stabilize. Kind of like psychology. You can't be aggressive all the time. Sometimes you have to make compromises. And here, g6 is some sort of a chess compromise. You decide to put these pawns on white squares just to stop this bishop from having any threats. Also, no mating ideas on the g file. And after everything is consolidated, as it is, because there's no way to break through, now Fabiano will try to come up with plans to win the game. Rook g4, queen e7. Now that everything's consolidated, he's going for the e5 pawn. Rook f4, queen takes e5. And yes, actually, there's few pieces left, but because of this rook and bishop being so disorganized, there are some issues. You can't go rook g4 because f5 and there's fork. So you got to go rook h4, and even though if you would have your pawn on g2 and your rook in the back rank somewhere on g1 or e1, then you would have an okay game. But because of these pieces being so misplaced, this position is just wonderful for Fabiano. Knight e6. And this is kind of, again, a typical super grandmaster way of playing. Okay, this knight is pretty on d4, but which one of my pieces is not playing? Well, the d8 rook has no targets. So I was considering rook b8, rook b2 when I was looking at this position, but knight e6 is even superior to that because this rook is already ready to go to d2, and this knight is taking away these important squares on g5 and f4. Rook h3. Note that rook g4 still doesn't work because of f5. Knight f4. And now both the rook and the knight will be fully functional. Rook g3, rook d2. And Kovalyov resigned, which might be surprising, but it shouldn't really surprise you, as queen g1, which would protect all of his guys, would run into knight e2, winning the exchange and also mating ideas on the back rank. And if you don't have queen g1, I will have either queen h5, having lots of pressure on h2, or even queen d4, of setting up rook d1 ideas. Seeing all of these threats, he decided to resign. Do you evaluate positions with words or chess notations? Von Hoffman's asking. Interesting question. Interesting question. Well, obviously, it doesn't make any sense to look at that with notation. I'm looking more of, chess moves, words, like a human. Von Hoffman, like a human. I evaluate like a human. Notations Also, I'm not sure what you mean by chess notations. Obviously, I say the coordinates. I'd say rook d2 or think rook d2. I don't know how else could I think about it. Obviously, I could, but I don't know how else. So, with this, he took the lead. And last but not least, let's check on this game between Carlsen and Duda. e4. No surprises, Duda sticks to his main weapon. He plays the Italian. And that was no surprise. What was a surprise is that Carlsen didn't play knight f6, but decided to go bishop c5. c3, preparing d4, but that's dissuaded by knight f6. Now, Carlsen was in a must-win situation. Not really likely to win, but he's trying his best. d6, knight d2. And this is a new plan favored by Duda. He wants to get his knight to g3 before castling, in this way winning some time. Let me point you out why he does it this way. Castles, a6. So this was one move, two move, three move, four moves. Now, if you go knight d2, 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. And you didn't have to waste time bringing your rook to e1. So that's the whole concept of Duda here. Let me see what chat is saying. So would you think more and like black pieces are well placed? No, of course I would talk about chess moves when I'm thinking chess. So of course I would think and say, oh, rook here, rook e1. I wouldn't just go, oh, white is better. That makes no sense. That's how computers think. They say, oh, white is just better. But always the question is why? But chess is not just statistics. So knight d2, he's attempting to get his knight into the game with knight f3, knight f1, knight g3. Knight f1, knight g3. And now he actually wins some time without getting the rook to e1. Bishop a7, bishop b3. White is planning to get the bishop to c2 and just try to break with d4. Rook e8. But Carlsen is trying actually to limit the play of Duda. He stops bishop g5 with h6. Gets the rook to e8 to stop d4 ideas. Bishop e6. And now is preparing d5. d5. He takes. Knight takes d5. Rook e1. Just trying to find the target on e5. Queen d6. And if anyone else was playing here, probably knight d2, knight c4 would be played. But because we're talking about Duda, he's going for the full point. He goes knight h4. His plan is to go knight f5, queen f3, and go full ham and attack. Let's see how Carlsen reacts. He plays queen e7. So he anticipates Duda's attack and goes and brings the queen to f6. Knight f5, queen f6, queen f3. Now, knight h5 is a huge threat. You can't really deal with that with normal ways. So Carlsen goes and plays g6. Excuse me. So g6 is a move that might be a little tricky, but actually makes sense. Excuse me. So if Carlsen manages to kick out the knight, have a grip on the position, he is the one with a bigger center, and white is the one struggling. On the other hand, the big question is if Duda can take on h6. That is the big question here. He the Joker says, I feel like this is an easy draw for black, and I don't like this version of the Italian. Yep, that's a matter of taste, yes. So g6 was played in the idea of if you take on h6, I'm just going to trap your knight. But Carlsen was picking on the right guy because Duda doesn't shy away from dubious or at least entertaining moves. Now, knight takes h6 is not dubious, but if you're a dogmatic player, you might just say this is nothing. This shouldn't work at all. Why? Because there's no way that this knight will survive. If you go knight g4, I'll take you, and suddenly I'll be the one attacking your king. Note that this bishop is very powerful, and I can start mounting and bringing all my pieces in. So if you're dogmatic, you would say that, okay, this knight is not going to escape. This position is just fine for black. But what is Duda? Duda is a concrete player. He cares if his idea can be refuted concretely. If he doesn't see a refutation, he will go for it. And that's kind of the big difference. That he would go for lines that you wouldn't expect to be good. He says, okay, I can go back knight g4 and sometime in the future, and I'm not scared to try it against you. Goes queen f6, knight f6, and knight e4. I mean, don't get me wrong, he is still trying to get rid of these exchanges and try to get the knight back through g4. He's just saying, I don't see a way I would lose that knight, so I might as well just try it out. Knight e4, knight h7. This is actually realizing, Carlsen move is actually realizing that this knight g4 plan is very real. So let's say if takes de, then this knight, the next move will go knight g4, and if the knight manages to run away, then it's over. Then it is just a great position for Duda. So Carlsen in a hurry goes knight h7 and prepares f5 in case of knight g4, forking and winning the game. So now on, the struggle begins. They're going to fight for these critical squares. g4. In fact, he could have even tried h4 here. Sometimes you could even have ideas as knight g5, trying to exchange off that piece. Note you can't take on h6 because there is knight takes e6 check. That's almost self-mating. So takes. This is almost mating. Bishop d1 takes. And soon enough, I might even have g3 checkmates, which is very cute. But obviously this is far-fetched, not likely to happen. But probably Duda was getting very anxious with this knight, so he's going for g4, g5 as quickly as possible, just to make sure that that knight still lives. Mooney Labs, that's true. That's true. The g4 was played with the point that g5 would be safeguarding this pony. f5, typical Carlsen, going for a ramble, but Duda is a good match. Knight g3, and when you close, then knight f5. Before the doors are closing, the other knight comes and aids that knight on h6. f4, knight f5 check. Now you could take on f5, but that's actually against the whole play of black. If d4 though, you could take and activate your rook. Probably you could go knight h4 and go back with your knight. But Carlsen is actually trying to pin and win one of those knights on h6. Note that those knights are kind of stuck. d4, and this is a very strong move. And now actually Carlsen will have to tread carefully because his king can be in some discovered checks. But knight g5. The point being, you can still successfully jump around because this knight is hanging. So Carlsen takes his chances and puts pressure and threatens this fork on f3. King g2, bishop d5 check, king f1. And right about here, we were looking at this position and was wondering if Carlsen is going to take a draw. Now, I was rather arguing against taking a draw because white still has some issues to face. This bishop is still on c1, yet to get out. It takes two more moves to activate this rook on a1. So if anyone's better or who should be pushing is clearly black. Also, don't forget that knight on h6 is awful. Knight f3 was played. So in fact, Carlsen could have drawn this way because you can't ever go back because there's knight f3 checks, winning the exchange. So Carlsen goes and plays knight f3, putting pressure. Note, you can't really jump around again yet because this is hanging, and at the end of all variations, I will take on e1, and then I'm just better. So you wouldn't want that. So rook d1 is played. Now knight d7, knight takes d5 is a threat. Rook d8. But Duda is very, very creative. And creative players are really good at calculating. Oh, Kide the Joker has a question. What about knight takes c7? So check here, takes, here. The problem is I take an extra piece attacking your rook. And even though you take one of mine, I'm still up so much material that this is the reason that knight c7 doesn't really work. So here, rook d8, and now knight takes d5. In fact, the fact that knight d7, knight takes d5 works gives a lot of props to Duda. Now suddenly, Carlsen is under some pressure. Because if you just play some casual moves, let's say knight h4, I go d takes c5, and next move is bishop f4, and suddenly you're the one getting hunted as black. So Carlsen was put to test in this position and had to find a very remarkable move. Now note that rook takes d5 doesn't work because bishop e4, and suddenly I'll take either the rook or the knight. You can try to give me a check, but now go g2, and you can't attack my bishop, and you're going to lose one of them. You're either going to lose the knight or you're going to lose the rook. So, knight takes d4 was played. The idea being, if I could take on d5 without this knight falling, why not just win a pawn back? So white had a choice of going bishop e4 here or taking on d4. Note again that this c2 bishop is still hanging, so it's not likely to be good for you if you do that. But Duda here decided, if I go bishop e4, probably there's knight e6. I'm still very passive, knight g5 is coming, and my pawns are just so weak, probably it's not practical to get into this one, into this endgame. So c takes d4 is played, d takes e5, and even though white is a little passive, he still has the bishop pair, and once he can activate it, he will have good chances. Rook takes d1, bishop takes d1, king g5. Note that Carlsen is clearly playing against this bishop. h4 check. Now if you go bishop d2 here, that would be a little slow. Knight takes e5, knight d3 would be coming, and suddenly you would have to deal with way too many problems on f2, and then Carlsen would actually be a little bit more happy than usual. He would be trying for the win there. Bishop c3, that is, there's knight d3, and yes, rook e1 doesn't work, but once I take this f2 pawn, the chances of me winning rises greatly. So if anything, that looks very, very, very good for black. So in fact, I was mostly considering bishop f3, but that would run into the same idea of knight e5. You do take some pawns, you still neglect development. I have knight d3 here, attacking both the bishop and the pawn on f2. If I manage to take that pawn, I might even have some counterplay against your king. So yes, you have lots of pawns now, but knight g3 is coming. I can start pushing my f-pawn, and this is some good stuff. It is still kind of clear that is black who's pushing for the win and not white. So therefore, Duda comes up with this idea of h4 check, which honestly I was a bit skeptical about. I don't think it's that good, or at least that was my first thought. But if you understand Duda's chess, you actually might be able to understand his concepts. His concept is, I'm going to find the only but the correct solution. He's a very concrete player. So h4 is very concrete. If you take, I can get my bishop out of c1, and if I manage to do that, I'm just doing fine. So he's saying that this will be fine for me if you take. So king f5 is forced. He says bishop c2 check. If you take, I go bishop d2, have a passer, and I might even dream about winning this game. And that is part of Duda's Ars Poetica. He's trying to go for the win whenever possible. And in this way, I think that is something to play for. But obviously, king g4 is the logical move. Carlsen is trying to play with f3. Bishop d1 check. You can't really move around. Carlsen doesn't want to draw, plays f3. And also, this seems to be helping black. On the other hand, this bishop got active now. Bishop g5. And look at that bishop. Suddenly, it's very useful. Knight e5. Knight d3 is a huge threat with mating ideas. So you must stop that. Knight c4, rook e1. And actually, I have to tell you about my general concept in chess. I think the bishop pair usually is worth a pawn. And Duda follows that to the T. He says, my bishops are so strong, I don't care if you take that pawn. I will have counterplay on the king side. So I wouldn't be so hard-pressed to give up yet. Now you can't really move the rook. Oh, that would be terrible also. This is a terrible move, obviously. Let's say wherever you can't really move it because there's rook e4 check and I take your knight. So you're forced to take on e1. King takes e1. Knight takes b2. Bishop f6. And bishop f6 is a very important, a little bit of an intermezzo. You'd think that isn't that good, but it's in fact very, very promising. If you go bishop g6 here, I get to play this very important move of bishop d4. Note you don't have knight d3 because my bishop is defending that square. And note that if I have this bishop on d4, this pawn push is not really that threatening anymore after some bishop e7 moves, because I control that h8 square, which is the most important, and I will have more chances pushing my own pawn on the c file. So bishop f6 was a circumspect and a very important move here, taking away this file from this bishop, also winning a tempo on the knight, forcing it to c4, bishop g6, and now h5, h6 is coming. And now you have to deal with that, otherwise that could get really dangerous. No wonder is following us. Thank you for following. So h5, h6 is coming, and there are multiple ways of stopping that pawn. You can go knight d6, knight f5, but that can get a little bit dangerous. So Carlsen came up with a different idea, which is kind of logical. He was putting pressure on f2, but it's not a target anymore, and you can't really enforce any attack on d3 and checks. So he decides that it's time to move the bishop to c5 and bring the bishop to f8 to h6 and block the eventual move forward with bishop c5. Now, even though this position looks better for black, it's just not enough. Because look at those bishops. They're dominating. And the problem is that this pawn is heading down the board. And if Duda manages to exchange this dark squared bishop for this knight, then the game just ends in a draw. No question about it. So here, Duda plays bishop f7. Now if h5, definitely Carlsen would play bishop f8, and there would be hope of getting knight d6 and pushing the c-pawn. And then black might have a chance to push on forward. But he played bishop f7, and the game ended in a draw. And this is the reason why, because knight d6, check, here, here, and I'm going to take on d6. a5, let's say b6, takes, here, takes, a5, and white will be just in due time to build a fortress. And that is why the game ended in a draw. But now this means that it is Fabiano Caruana leading and Carlsen chasing. Will he have a chance in the future? We shall see. But for now, Caruana is in the clear lead with Magnus chasing. Good question if it will work out for him, but it'll be still a tight race, so definitely stay tuned for that one because it's going to be tough and exciting finish. So with all that, hope you enjoyed this. Now I'm going to join this raid, so please join us in this raid. Oh, did it work? Didn't. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let me see. Hello, MNRP. We're just wrapping up. And we're going to go to the jib. Can't. Wow. Okay. So if we can't go there, so definitely thank you so much for watching. We were going to have a chess lab if you want to check that out. Tune in tomorrow. And then, who should we raid? Let's raid Miss Lila Koridza. Hopefully that'll be fun. She's also streaming on Chess, so I hope you guys will have lots of fun there as well. Take care, people, and have fun. Take care.